Tomorrow, the Path of Champions PvE game mode will be coming to Legends of Runeterra, and I am incredibly excited for it. It has been something I've been looking forward to for some time. If you know me from the Elder Scrolls Legends days, you know that I loved the story content in that game, and the fact that we are getting something similar now in Legends of Runeterra is just a special treat for me because I really love that kind of content. Speaking of that kind of content, tonight on stream, I'm going to be streaming the Path of Champions game mode early. I'm part of an early access event, and so if you want to see it a little bit early, you can check it out tonight live on Twitch. And then obviously I will be posting some run-throughs on YouTube as well because I'm just legitimately excited for it. However, the Path of Champions is not the only thing that is coming to Legends of Runeterra. We are also getting Jayce. We're getting this mini champion expansion, and today we got reveals for what to expect with Jayce, and honestly, it's pretty exciting. We finally get some additional Lux support, but I think Jayce is good enough to stand on his own, and I think that you could potentially build him with champions not named Lux. So I don't think that it's going to pigeonhole him into that kind of like 1-2 combo. So let's start with Jayce himself. Jayce is a 4-cost 4/4 champion from Piltover and Zaun. On play, you choose to grant him quick attack or challenger, and I love that they kind of give you that flexibility, and that also plays into his hammer and the way that it transforms, like from a flavor standpoint. I really dig this. The level up condition is that you have cast 2 6 or more cost spells in the game, so he doesn't have to see them cast, which is also very nice, very relevant. And then obviously he has this when I level up, create an acceleration gate in hand. We're going to cover what the gate is in just a moment. Now the leveled up version of Jayce is a 4-cost 5/5, so he gets the standard +1/+1 on level up. On play, you still get the choice to grant quick attack or challenger, which is also interesting because there might be games where you need challenger early and then later you want to go more aggressive or go on offense, and you can play your second Jayce and then choose, say, quick attack, for example. So I really dig that it's not like a permanent choice and it's every time you play Jayce. And then he also says, and this is the important part, each round, the first time you cast a 6+ cost spell, cast it again on the same targets. This is like a mini karma effect. So the good news is you don't have to wait until super late in the game to start doubling stuff. The bad news is you obviously need to have 6 cost spells because that's the only thing that you are doubling, but there are still some pretty neat tricks that I think that you can do with Jayce, which is again one of those reasons that I want to make sure I'm highlighting other builds that aren't just Lux. But obviously Lux is, I think, the big one, and I really like the change that they made to Lux recently where they moved her from a 6-cost champion down to a 5, because that means that in theory you can set yourself up for that situation where on curve you're playing Jayce on 4, Lux on 5, a 6-cost spell on 6, you're leveling up your Lux, and you're giving yourself that little bit of credit towards leveling your Jayce if he's still around at that point, and so on and so forth. So the curve is kind of nice in the Jayce Lux deck. Obvious interactions between the two. Now when Jayce levels up, he creates the acceleration gate. This is a 6-cost slow spell, and it says give your allies +2, +0 and quick attack this round. So very nice on a wide board, but again, it's still a 6-cost spell, and that's relevant. If they already have it, give them a random keyword instead. So if you choose quick attack on Jayce, for example, he levels up, you play acceleration gate, he'll get a random keyword. If you chose challenger, then he can still get quick attack and make use of both of those keywords, which is also rather nice. Jayce's champion spell is Shock Blast, and this is a 6-cost slow spell. You deal 3 to an enemy or the enemy nexus and 3 to another. And this is very relevant when you start considering a leveled up Jayce. So a leveled up Jayce that is copying, right? We get that karma style effect, is suddenly very threatening. It's going to deal 6 to a nexus and then 6 to a unit potentially, or you could divide it up, right? Like you could nuke 2 units if you really need to, but that's a really powerful effect. Yes, it's at slow speed, but it's very threatening, and I think it's worth the investment there. And that's just with what we're seeing here. Again, we get some additional Jayce support tools and archetype support tools that we're going to go over in just a minute, but it's also just a great tool with Lux. If you're playing Jayce and Lux together, You play a Shock Blast, well, you can deal 3 to one unit, 3 to another, and then you're also going to get your final spark to potentially nuke another. And so while at, you know, face value, you say, okay, well, this is a 6 cost slow spell that's kind of mediocre. But once you factor in the interactions, it could become a 6 cost, you know, spell that ends up wiping your opponent's board, which is very, very relevant. So I like what we've seen so far. We're going to cover the other cards, and then I'll start talking about non-Lux potential interactions along the way. But obviously, again, in the back of your mind, just think Lux, and Jayce Lux will absolutely be an archetype that people play. So next up, we have Forge Chief. This is a 1 cost 2/1 in Piltover and Zaun, and on strike, refill 1 spell mana. This card is pretty neat because it's not necessarily a tune, but you could, in theory, if you find a way to buff this or it gets quick attack or whatever, you could start getting some additional value out of it. And also, if it's not blocked, then it's better than a tune because you will very likely get multiple triggers out of this. But it's also worth noting that this is very, very nice in something like a Nami deck. And so whether you're playing Jayce with Nami or not, Forge Chief will likely end up in a Nami Piltover and Zaun deck. So I know, for example, some people have been toying with playing those regions together, and it's like Nami and Teemo or Nami and Fizz or some sort of mix, and they're, you know, using some of these refill your spell mana cards that exist in Piltover and Zaun to speed up the level up condition of Nami after her adjustment. And this gives you another tool in that toolbox, and so I really like it. Now, obviously, giving yourself any sort of early game body while also generating spell mana is important if you're going to lock yourself into an archetype where you have to play spells that cost 6 or more. And this helps with that. So I really like this card, and it will absolutely see play, I think, in the Jayce decks and probably a few others. Next up, we have Ferros Financier. This is a 2 cost 2/2 in Piltover and Zaun, and on play you manifest a 6 cost or more spell from your regions. Now it's manifest, so you're going to be presented 3, and then you get to choose one. I like that it's from your regions just because this allows you to kind of play around with your deck building. So again, you might for sure be playing Jayce with Lux, and so this could also be showing you cards like Judgment, for example, because you're taking into account that region, Demacia. However, if you wanted to be extra cheeky and you wanted to play something like Jayce Karma and go hard on doubling, maybe you want to play the 6 cost spell that makes 2 exact copies of something, but because of a leveled up Jayce and you don't have to wait until you're at 10 mana, you know, that doubles it and you just give yourself a board full of Jayces or whatever. The Ferros Financier, for example, would be another possible way that you could find that spell. And so whatever your deck building choices are with Jayce, I am a fan here. I like this card. I think it will be a natural inclusion. This will be to Jayce decks probably what like Conchologist is to Bandle City. I don't think it's as good because the cards that the Conch creates are cheaper and usually more relevant. This is very much a archetype specific card, but I like that it exists. And I think this will be a really big help in like the expeditions format for making sure you have enough ways to activate Jayce. Next up, we have what's really more of a Heimerdinger card, and I want to talk about that in just a minute as well, but this is Hextech Handler. It is a 3 cost 3/2 in Piltover and Zaun, but it has the tech keyword, which is very relevant because your tech cards all now properly contribute to leveling up Heimerdinger. And it says that it has quick attack. That's a very relevant keyword. And also grant tech allies everywhere +1/+1 once you've cast a 6 cost spell this game. This doesn't say summon on it, but it says once you've cast a 6 cost spell this game. So if you've cast a spell and then you play this, I assume that this will still then trigger that ability. And because it doesn't say play, I assume it's going to work just like a summon effect, which is very relevant when you have ways to create copies of this card, for example, multiple ways to play this card. And obviously Piltover and Zaun is a region that does that very well. And that's very relevant because that is an insane way to make Heimerdinger far more relevant and far more scaling into the late game. And then when you factor in that this is a tech card, so it will now count towards Heimerdinger as well, this is a great addition for Heimer. And I don't want it to be lost on folks that you could, for example, play Jayce and Heimerdinger together, and then that leaves your second region entirely open to whatever pairing you want to make. So yes, Lux stands out as an obvious inclusion with Jayce, but that pigeonholes you into also playing Demacia, where you could play Jayce and Heimer and then pick whatever region you want. Maybe you want to run Eye of the Dragon and you want to pair it with Ionia, or maybe you want to pick Targon or Shadow Isles for more removal, whatever the case may be. That leaves Hextech Handler available to be played in the Heimer list, also in the Jayce list, and kind of be a bit nutty. So love the Heimer support, love this card. I think that this is honestly enough to get me brewing with Heimerdinger again. I think that Heimerdinger still has some issues with survivability. The 3 health is always a bit of a burden for his cost, but if you can get yourself into a position where you're playing Heimer with some spell mana backed up, and if you have played a handler or two with the buffs, even if you get 1 or 2 turrets created, you know, there's a big difference between, you know, fast burst speed before your Heimer dies. Maybe you make 1 or 2 3/1 fearsomes, but now if they're 5/3 fearsomes that you're getting to play for free, that's a bit of a different story. So overall, just really like this card. It's kind of got my wheels spinning, and I'm excited to try a Jayce Heimer build as well. Next up, we have Ferros Skycruiser. This is a 4-cost 2/4 from Piltover and Zaun. It has the elusive keyword, and it says grant me +2/+0 once you've cast a 6 or more cost spell this game. So a 4-cost 2/4 elusive is not very exciting, obviously, but a 4-cost 4/4 is pretty relevant. It's not game-breakingly broken, and so I don't know if this ends up making the cut, because you also want to be pretty spell-centric in a list like this. So, like, you want to ride that line, usually with a pretty good or nicely even split between your units and your spells in a deck like this, and the units you play have to either feed your game plan or just be very relevant. So I don't know if this ends up making the cut, but I do like the idea of a 4-cost 4/4 elusive, and so that's not lost on me. I don't know what kind of 6-cost spell I want to play to make sure I'm getting that trigger. Like, that's ultimately the problem. Usually when you're playing elusive units, it's because you're playing very aggressively and you're trying to take advantage of the fact that your opponent can't defend very well. And playing for the late game where you're dropping a big like 6-cost spell into elusives isn't usually a thing. And if it is, you'd probably rather be playing Ionia with pods or something to that effect. So I don't know. I think the stat line is fine and fair. I just don't know it's going to be good enough to make the final cut of lists. Next up, we have Ellis Ferros. This is the Jayce boat, if you will. This is a 7-cost 6/5 with the quick attack keyword from Piltover and Zaun. It says when I'm summoned, draw a Jayce, hence the Jayce boat. But on attack, deal 1 to the enemy nexus. Then for each 6 or more cost spell you've cast this game, increase it by 1. So this is kind of a nice boat. As far as the boats go, this is one of my favorites in terms of playability, because it's got a decent stat line, a very relevant keyword that is aggressive, and then the trigger when you attack is also aggressive. So this helps you close out games. Like, you're finding Jayce, but this card in and of itself kind of requires some sort of answer. Like, your opponent is going to want to deal with this, and if they're dealing with this, that's more ammo that is not being directed at your Jayce, right? Like, if your goal is to protect your Jayce and you play the boat to fetch your Jayce, having the boat be relevant and be scary enough that they want to spend removal on the boat and not on the Jayce is rather nice. Now, there is some caveats I want to throw out. Yes, the 6/5 with quick attack, very, very nice, but this is a 7-cost unit. Dragons are very popular on the ladder, and so if you are playing this and then they answer with an Eclipse Dragon, suddenly the quick attack's not super relevant. The on-attack trigger is still very relevant, and sometimes, you know, a point or 2 or 3 of damage is all you really need, but just keep in mind that damage is going to the Nexus, not to the unit. So Eclipse Dragon is still a pretty big wall, turns out. But overall, I like this. As far as the boats go, I think this is one of the more playable boats, and that in and of itself is a good thing. But we're gonna go to the last bit of reveals. Now, right out of the gate here, this Ferros dividend all the way to the left is just the skill that's referenced by Ellis Ferros, because again, you can see the little circle, which means it is a skill that can be responded to, and this is called Ferros's dividend. So that's what this is. So really, the next card that we're going to talk about is the Forge of Tomorrow. And I love this card. This is a 3-cost landmark in Piltover and Zon. When I am summoned, summon a Forge Worker. When you cast a 6 or more cost spell, destroy me and refill your spell mana. Now, the Forge Worker is just a generic 3/3, no keywords, nothing else really to write home about, except for he's built like Chris Hemsworth apparently, and looks like he's having a great time. But the real important piece here is that you get a 3/3 for 3 that sets up your ability to play 6-cost spells and then also follow it up with either other things or bank your spell mana for a follow-up round where you can then play yet another spell and then maybe another unit. This is absolutely the kind of seemingly benign or seemingly vanilla card that really makes a deck archetype like this work, because mana is at a premium when you're having to play these very expensive spells. You either have to not spend some in the early rounds, or you have to find ways to generate it. So again, that 1-drop, that's just a simple 2/1 strike, I give you a spell mana, very relevant. Cards with a tune, very relevant. And this, while it's not quite a tune, this is right in that same vein, right in that alley. And I think that this is going to end up being a staple in Jayce decks as a result. I think that it's very, very solid. Speaking of Forge Worker, we've got Assembly Line. This is a 6-cost slow spell that just very simply says summon 2 Forge Workers. Now, this is less impressive. You do spend 6 to get a 6/6 worth of stats, but at least as of right now, there's not any other interactions with Forge Workers. Forge Worker doesn't have a relevant like tag. It's got no keywords, and so this isn't as interesting as like the spells that create Marauders, or it's not as interesting as, you know, the Demacia spell, for example, because even though that's a randomized unit, all of those units you're getting are usually of value and have a relevant keyword or ability or something. And then in this case, you're just getting the Forge Workers. Now, it is a 6-cost spell, so it does help with the Jayce triggers. This is a common, and so again, this probably really helps out in expeditions. I think that that's what this card is honestly really designed for. I don't think it's good enough to make the cut in just a regular Jayce deck. But maybe if you want to go really wild and rogue and you're pairing, say, like Jayce with Heimerdinger, and you're going, I don't know, with a different region and you're a little short on relevant 6-cost spells, you could jam this in there. But this one feels like the weakest of the stuff that was shown in these previews. Now, the last card we have is Hextech Anomaly. This is a 6-cost focus spell, but the reality is this card just doesn't even exist. It says, when you draw or create me in hand, or each round start while I'm in your hand, transform me into a random 6 or more cost spell. Now, this one does not say in your regions, so we'll have to wait and see exactly how wild this is. But basically, when this card is drawn or created, or if it somehow makes it into your hand and then a new round starts, like, it's just going to become something else. And then it's going to keep doing that. And so it's never really going to be Hextech Anomaly. And I'm actually curious if there's a way to even get this into your hand without drawing or creating and before a round starts, because I would love to know what happens if you try to manually cast this. But basically, this just becomes something else. Now, it is worth noting that this is by itself a 6-cost spell, though. So when we start thinking about, for example, the 2/2 that manifests a spell, this is going to for sure be an option that will always be in your regions. And then because this says when you draw or create me in hand, well, if you manifest into this and you choose it, it's then going to become something else. So for the folks that were kind of, you know, not happy about some of those like randomized Vandal City shenanigans, welcome to Hextech Anomaly. But overall, I think it's a little bit of fun. I don't think that it's going to be ran in main deck options, so really it's just, in my opinion, like the Hail Mary option off of a manifest choice, right? Like you play the 2/2, the other two options don't look great, so you take this just to roll the dice. People will for sure at some point lose to that, and they will not be happy, and they will be vocal about it. That is a prediction that I feel pretty confident in, but I don't think that it's going to be as like meta impacting as the Vandal City stuff was, just because the level of value isn't quite the same. You know, you're getting, like I said before, you're getting a 2/2 for 2 and it manifests, but it's manifesting expensive things. It's not quite the same value that Conchologist provides. And then again, you have to like manifest into this, and then this has to become something like game breakingly relevant, and you have to be at the right point in time to take advantage of it, because also this randomly changes every round as well. And so you can kind of see where I'm going. It will happen. Somebody will lose to it and they will be very upset, and it's going to suck, and it's going to feel bad for whoever loses to it, because you're going to say like, you know, I couldn't play around it. That takes away my player agency. This sucks. All very valid criticisms. But the number of times that it happens will be pretty small. So we will see. I'll be rooting for any Jayce decks that run the 2/2 manifest unit when seasonal time rolls around, because I want to see it happen on cast. But you know, outside of that, this was the series of reveals. I'm really excited to play Jayce. As I mentioned before, I think Jayce and Lux will be the most popular of the pairings, but I'm a bit eager to try him out with Heimerdinger, maybe try out Nami, and Karma is another option as well, just to double up on the doubling. And who loves a, you know, a double? Well, a double of a double is better than a double, and so I love a double of a double. That's who loves a double of a double. Anyway, if you made it this far and you actually listened to all of that, I appreciate you. Thank you. You are a saint, as always. And again, tonight, going to be doing the early access for Path of Champions, and then tomorrow we'll be playing it in earnest, and I will likely do some YouTube content with the game mode, because it's really, really cool, gang. And anyway, if you made it this far, I know I've already said that once already, but I really do love you. Thanks for watching. Until next time, may you walk on warm sands.